I've got you. Stay with me, ma'am. Someone call for help right now!
The bracelet on your wrist. Where did you get that bracelet?
Whatever number you had in mind, triple it, and stay away from my family.
I didn't come for your money. Learn manners before you inherit that company.
That bracelet on your wrist, may I ask where it came from?
It was my grandmother's. She said it once saved her life.
7:42 in the morning, and Aliyah Burke was covered in dew and rose stems, arranging her flower cart on the corner of Peachtree and 5th, beneath Hanla Tower, when the most powerful woman in the city collapsed 3 feet in front of her. 1 second, Grace Kong was reaching for a bundle of white lilies, complimenting the shop, telling stories, her tailored coat immaculate. The next second, her knees buckled, her coffee cup shattered against the pavement, and 50 people on that sidewalk did exactly what people do in a city that moves too fast to stop. They filmed her. They stepped around her. Only one woman dropped to her knees on the concrete in her work apron and caught her before her head hit the ground. That woman didn't know she was catching the mother of a Korean billionaire. She only knew a stranger needed her. She had no idea that single instinct, the instinct to kneel instead of walk past, was about to hand her a wedding ring, a war she never asked for, and a secret that had been waiting 29 years to find her. By the time the ambulance lights had faded, Aliyah was back at her cart, hands still shaking, sweeping broken glass into a dustpan, trying to forget the way the woman's fingers had gripped hers like she was the only solid thing in the world. She didn't expect flowers to change her life. She expected to sell out of tulips by noon like every Tuesday. She did not expect the black car. She did not expect the driver in the gray suit who stepped out, studied her like she was a problem to be solved, and said 4 words that would haunt her for weeks. "Miss Kong wants you." 2 days later, Aliyah stood in a marble lobby that smelled like money, wearing her one good blazer, waiting to be thanked. Instead, a tall man in a charcoal suit walked past the receptionist, looked her up and down and said, loud enough for the whole lobby to hear, "So you're the woman who's been telling my mother stories." Kang Ji-ho didn't yell. He didn't have to. His voice was ice, and every assistant in that lobby suddenly found their phones very interesting. "I don't know what you think you're owed for helping a woman who fell down," he said. "But whatever number you had in your head, triple it, take the check and don't come near my family again." He set an envelope on the marble counter without looking at her twice. Aliyah looked at that envelope, then at him, and felt something inside her go very quiet and very still, the particular stillness of a woman who has been underestimated her entire life and has finally had enough of it. "I didn't come here for your money," she said. "I came because your mother's assistant called me. Twice." She picked the envelope up, walked to where he stood and set it back in his hand. "Learn some manners before you inherit that company, Mr. Kong." She walked out of that lobby with her back straight and her eyes burning, and she promised herself she would never set foot in that building again. She had no idea Grace Kong was watching the entire thing from the security office upstairs, and smiling. If you've ever been judged before anyone knew your story, tell me where you're watching this from tonight. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what Grace Kong does next, because very soon, you'll find out exactly why a billionaire's mother needed this particular street vendor and no one else. Grace Kong did not accept no. 3 days after the lobby incident, a car appeared outside Aliyah's apartment, not with an envelope, but with Grace herself wrapped in a wool coat, insisting on tea at the small folding table by the window. "My son is rude," Grace said simply, "but he is not wrong to be careful. He has been burned before. I am not here about the hospital, Aliyah. I am here about your grandmother." Aliyah went cold. "You didn't know my grandmother." "I knew a bracelet," Grace said, and her eyes dropped, for just a moment, to the thin cracked jade bracelet Aliyah always wore on her left wrist, the one piece of jewelry she never took off. "Your grandmother's bracelet. May I ask where it came from?" "She never told me," Aliyah admitted. "Just that it saved her life once. She made me promise never to sell it no matter how bad things got. Even when things got very bad." Something moved across Grace Kang's face. Grief, recognition, 29 years of searching folded into one long exhale. "I would like you to marry my son," Grace said. Aliyah nearly dropped her teacup. "Mrs. Kong, I sold you lilies 4 days ago." "I am aware," Grace said. "I am also the chairwoman of one of the largest companies on the East Coast. And I never ask for something without understanding its full weight. I'm asking you now. Not for my son's comfort. For a debt I have owed a family I lost track of for almost 3 decades. She would not explain further. Not yet. She only asked Aliyah to trust her, for reasons Aliyah could not yet understand, and to give a hard, cold, unfair man exactly 6 weeks to prove he deserved the chance his mother was handing him. Ji-ho found out about the arrangement the same way most of Atlanta eventually would, from his mother, over dinner, delivered like a business decision that had already closed. You cannot be serious, he said, standing so fast his chair scraped the floor. The flower cart woman? Mother, the Yoon merger is worth $400 million. Chairman Yoon expects us engaged by the spring gala. You want me to blow that apart for a woman I insulted in our own lobby? I want you to trust me for once in your life without demanding a spreadsheet, Grace said quietly. Your father trusted me blindly one time. It was the best decision he ever made. Father isn't here to ask why, Ji-ho said, and regretted it the second it left his mouth. Grace didn't flinch. She had buried grief deeper than that sentence could reach. 6 weeks, she said. Get to know her before you destroy something you don't understand. That is all I am asking of my only son. When Ji-ho showed up at Aliyah's flower cart the next morning, not to apologize but to assess the situation, Aliyah handed him a bucket of thorny stems and a pair of gloves. If you're going to stand there judging my life, she said, you can at least be useful while you do it. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Kong Ji-ho laughed, a real laugh surprised out of him, and picked up the gloves. Here's a question to sit with. If someone you loved was hiding a decades-old debt of honor, one that could reshape your whole family, would you want the truth immediately? Or would you rather they protect you from it a little longer? Tell me in the comments and hit subscribe, because the truth Grace Kong has been guarding is bigger than anyone in this story is ready for. The 6 weeks changed something neither of them expected. Ji-ho started showing up at 6 in the morning before markets opened, learning which roses bruised easiest, which customers needed a free bundle and a kind word more than a sale. Aliyah started noticing that underneath the tailored suits was a man who flinched every time his phone rang with his mother's number. Like he was always braced for bad news. Why does she scare you like that? Aliyah asked one morning. She doesn't scare me, Ji-ho said. I'm scared of losing her the way I lost my father. She's the only parent I have left, and she's been carrying something heavy since before I can remember. She won't let me carry it with her. That same night, Grace finally called her son into her study, the one room in the house he was never allowed into as a child, and set 2 things on the table between them. An old photograph, yellowed at the edges, and half of a jade bracelet, its clasp broken clean. 29 years ago, Grace said. Before Hanla Group existed, before your father built anything, I was a nobody in this country. No money. No family nearby. And there was a fire in the building where I lived, with you when you were 11 days old. Ji-ho went very still. A young black woman pulled me out of that stairwell with you in my arms. She gave up her own coat. She stayed with us until dawn because I had no one else to call. I never got her full name. I only had this. She touched the broken bracelet. I gave her the matching half so I could find her again one day, and repay what could never truly be repaid. I spent 29 years looking, Grace said. I found her granddaughter selling flowers under our building. Everything Ji-ho thought he understood about his mother's decision collapsed and rebuilt itself in the same breath. Ji-ho drove to Aliyah's cart that night and told her everything. The fire, the bracelet, the debt his mother had carried like a second heartbeat for nearly 3 decades. Aliyah sat down hard on her folding stool. My grandmother never said a word. 29 years. And she never once told me we saved someone's life. She saved mine, Ji-ho said quietly. Specifically mine. I was 11 days old. For the first time since the lobby, since the envelope, since every cold word he had thrown at her, Ji-ho reached for Aliyah's hand instead of a checkbook. I owe you an apology bigger than the one I gave you, he said. I looked at you and saw a stranger asking for something. I never considered that your family had already given mine everything. Long before I could say thank you. Aliyah didn't pull her hand away, but she didn't melt into his arms either. An apology doesn't erase the envelope, Ji-ho, she said. You don't get to feel guilty for a week and call us even. If this is real, prove it slowly. I've spent my whole life being underestimated. I won't spend the rest of it being someone's redemption story. It was the most honest thing anyone had said to him in years, and it was the moment he actually started falling in love with her. Word of the broken engagement reached Yoon Seo-yeon before Ji-ho found the courage to tell her himself. Seo-yeon had spent 3 years preparing to be Mrs. Kang, not for love, but because her father's entire merger depended on that wedding happening on schedule. She cornered Aliyah outside a charity luncheon 2 weeks later, smiling the kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. "You have no idea what you're standing in the middle of," Seo-yeon said. "My father has spent 2 years building a merger on the promise of this marriage. If it collapses, do you understand what happens to hundreds of employees? To my family's name? And you think a flower cart and a sad story about a fire entitles you to Ji-ho's whole world." 3 days later, a story hit the local business blogs. Kang family bride under investigation, vendors' permits falsified, sources say. Fabricated, planted, devastating. Aliyah's cart was shut down by city inspectors within the hour, her name dragged through comment sections by strangers who had never met her. Every ounce of dignity she had built over years reduced to a headline. She packed her cart into her car alone in the rain and drove away without calling Ji-ho at all. "Before I show you what happens next, predict it with me. Does Aliyah walk away for good? Or come back and fight for the truth?" Comment your prediction, hit subscribe if you need to see how this ends, because the biggest secret in this story is about to come into the light, and it changes everything you think you know. Ji-ho searched 3 days before Odell Vance, Aliyah's friend from the market, finally told him where to find her, back at her grandmother's old church, sitting in the last pew staring at nothing. He didn't bring flowers. He brought the truth. Seo-yeon's father planted that story, he said, sliding into the pew beside her. "I have the emails. I have proof. And there's something else you need to see." He handed her the photograph his mother had kept for 29 years, a young woman, unmistakably Aliyah's grandmother, holding a wrapped newborn in a smoke-stained hospital hallway. Grace Kang collapsed against her shoulder in the same frame, both of them crying. On the back, in careful handwriting, "Baby Ji-ho, 11 days old. The woman who saved us both. I will find her again." Aliyah held the photograph with both hands, and for the first time since her grandmother's funeral, she cried the way grief finally lets you cry when the missing piece arrives too late for the person who needed to hear it. "She kept a secret this big," Aliyah whispered. "And she never told me I came from a woman brave enough to run into a burning building for a stranger." "She didn't have to tell you," Ji-ho said gently. "You already carry it. It's in everything you do, every free bouquet you give a grieving stranger, every hour you gave my mother without knowing who she was. Kindness like that doesn't skip a generation, Aliyah. It found me twice." He knelt in that church pew, not with a ring yet, but with something more fragile and more important. His full, unguarded honesty. "I'm not asking you to marry me because my mother owes your family a debt," he said. "I'm asking because somewhere between the flower cart and this pew, I stopped seeing an arrangement and started seeing my whole future. Take whatever time you need. I will still be standing here." The truth came out publicly 2 weeks later, at the very gala where the Yoon merger was supposed to be announced. Chairman Yoon stood to speak first, hinting loudly that the Kang family had embarrassed itself chasing a street vendor with a fabricated story, demanding the board reconsider Ji-ho's leadership entirely. Grace Kang stood before he could finish. She did not raise her voice. She simply placed the old photograph on the podium screen for the entire room to see, told the true story of a fire 29 years ago in 5 plain sentences, and looked directly at Chairman Yoon. "You built a merger on my son's obedience," she said. "I built my life on a debt of honor to a woman who ran into fire for strangers. I know which one of us built something worth keeping." The room did not know whether to gasp or applaud. Seo-yeon, standing beside her father, finally spoke the truth she had been swallowing for years. "I never wanted this marriage either, father," she said quietly, in front of the entire board. "I was afraid to disappoint you. I am not afraid anymore." The merger collapsed that night, not because Grace Kang destroyed it, but because it had never been built on anything real to begin with. Aliyah's business permits were quietly, publicly restored the following morning, along with a formal apology from the city and a printed correction from every outlet that had run the lie. Ji-ho didn't propose with cameras or headlines. He proposed at the flower cart at 6 in the morning, wearing the same gloves she had handed him that first morning, with the restored half of the jade bracelet resting in his palm, the two broken pieces finally made whole. "I know I can't undo the envelope," he said, "but I can spend the rest of my life proving I see you. All of you. Not the arrangement. Not the debt. You." Aliyah looked at the bracelet, then at him, then let herself finally fully believe she was allowed to be chosen for exactly who she was. "Ask me properly," she said, smiling through tears, "and maybe I'll say yes." He did. She said yes. 6 months later, the corner of Peachtree and 5th looks different. Aliyah's flower cart is still there, she refused to let it go, but beside it now stands the Grace House Market Hall, where Odell sells her sweet tea rent-free for life, and a dozen other vendors who were once invisible on that sidewalk finally have a roof over their heads. Grace Kong visits every single week, no security detail, just tea and stories, closer to Aliyah than she ever imagined a mother-in-law could be. And carved quietly into the market hall's cornerstone, where only the people who matter ever notice it, are the words Aliyah's grandmother used to whisper to her every single morning before school. "You never know whose whole life you're holding in your hands. Be gentle with it anyway." If this story moved you tonight, hit subscribe, tap that like button, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like Aliyah's. Tell me honestly in the comments. Have you ever helped a stranger with no idea what it would come back to give you? This has been Empire City Romance Stories, where kindness is never wasted, and love always finds the ones who earned it quietly. We'll see you in the next story.